Good evening and welcome to the Candidates Forum presented and produced by the League of Women Voters of Northwest Wayne County. My name is Valerie Nelson and I'm Vice President of Voter Services of our local League of Women Voters. I'm also the moderator for this event. Tonight, we welcome the candidates for the Northville City Council. There are 3 candidates running for 2 seats. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization. We do not support or oppose any candidate running for office. The League does take position on issues after study, so you may see our name attached to an issue that we're advocating or opposing. The League of Women Voters is where hands-on work to safeguard democracy leads to civic improvement. Membership is open to anyone who is at least 16 years of age, and you can join through our website. The League's main mission is to promote political responsibility through informed and active participation in government. One of the ways we do that is by having forums such as this one tonight. The League is also preparing a nonpartisan voter guide, which can be found online at www.vote411.org. Holding a candidates forum by Zoom poses its challenges different from an in-person forum. Only League personnel and the candidates are present at the forum. We solicited questions from the public in advance so we could ask them at tonight's forum. Questions were screened for clarity, and those which included personal attacks were eliminated. The views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates and not the League of Women Voters. All qualified candidates were invited and are here tonight. All the candidates have agreed to the format for tonight's forum, which is as follows. Each candidate will be allowed a 2-minute opening statement, a 2-minute response to all questions, and a 2-minute closing statement. The order that candidates speak was determined by a random selection witnessed by the candidates before the recording of the forum. We will rotate the order of the candidate who responds to a question first. League member Jackie Peters produced this forum tonight, and Susan Rowe is providing support, and Carrie Moon Dupree is our timer. She will be holding up cards so that the candidates know when their time is up. The candidate must stop when the stop sign appears. And now we will get started with our forum. Let's begin with the opening statement. Mr. Giesa.
Okay, good evening. First, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for this opportunity to introduce myself and my platform. My overarching goal as City Council member is to ensure our children and our children's children will be able to enjoy Northville as we do today. A job building cars with computers brought me and my family to Michigan in 1982. I retired from the computer industry in 2010. I've lived in Northville since 1998. In 2016, I served as president of the local Rotary Club. Following that, I served on the club's foundation for 4 years. I'm still very active with the club today. With the city, I currently serve on or am involved with 8 different boards or commissions. In 2018, I founded Northville's Sustainability Team, and I'm a member of the Michigan League of Bicyclists and the Friends of the Rouge. I served 6 years in the Army Reserve. I have too many hobbies to list. My daughter and son both live and work in Howell, Michigan. I have 5 grandchildren, all under the age of 12. My priority issues. We're at a historic inflection point, to say the least. The sale of the Downs property will bring change to our community. To that end, I fully support the Planning Commission's revision of Northville's master plan so our ordinances and codes properly reflect our concerns and core values for property developments, both large and small. I support Northville's COVID-19 prevention programs to protect citizens and to support our businesses. I will work on sustainability and environmental conservation, including stormwater assets, our tree population, and the city's infrastructure. I am committed to protecting our environment. Finally, I support remodeling our city offices to make them attractive, energy efficient, climate controlled, and safe workspaces for our office workers, our police, and our fire personnel. Thank you.
Mr. Carter.
Thank you. I'd like to start tonight by thanking the League of Women Voters of Northwest Wayne County for hosting today's forum. I fully expect tonight to be a great exchange of ideas, and I think you're going to hear from three people that are passionate about doing everything we can to make Northville an even better place to live and to raise a family. To introduce myself, I'm John Carter. I've been a Northville resident for close to a decade, and I have three children ages 11, 9, and 6 years old. Professionally, I have over 20 years of experience in finance and management consulting, and I currently serve as the automotive and mobility leader for Slalom Consulting. Over the years, I've served our community as an elder, the head of the finance committee, and ultimately the president of the nonprofit for the Northville's First Presbyterian Church, where I help steer the organization to financial stability, a member of our economic development committee, part of the leadership team for the Ford Field Task Force, and as a member of our sustainability committee. I'm running because I believe that we as a city council have a duty to be stewards of our city's fiscal health. And I believe my background in finance can be an asset in doing so. I'm also passionate about supporting our downtown businesses, as I have as a member of the Economic Development Committee. I think we need to embrace growth and development, but we need to do it in a manner that's consistent with our rich history and our small town personality. And we'll cover that as we get into further discussions around the Downs development. And lastly, I want to make sure the plans that we've put together for Ford Field and daylighting of the Riverwalk, that these plans that can be wonderful green spaces and parks in our community become a reality. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to tonight.
I'd just like to remind the candidates to mute yourselves when you're not speaking. Mr. Krenz.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for hosting us and for hosting the fine gentlemen and Pat and John. I want to thank the League of Women Voters and congratulations on your 100-year anniversary last year. I'm a resident, excuse me, my wife and I are residents since June 6, 2008, when we moved in, and we never looked back. We have three children at Hillside and Emmerman that are 12, 10, and 7. And I'm driven by dedication of service to my neighbors in the community. I currently serve in 3 roles. First, as a city council member, appointed by city council when the Honorable Sam Kong stepped down in May. Some things I support there are some good wins that we've had then was social work for police, the social work support, excuse me, construction standards, and Alice Terrace renovations. Also on planning commission since 2018, before the first time Hunter Pasture brought the Downs in. I've well over 1,000 hours into that and served on the community outreach community. Then also I chair the Farmers Market Task Force because as we all know, I hope the farmers market is going to have to be reimagined and re-envisioned in the future state. Also while I'm planning, I was happy to lead the front porch incentive to help bring families to the front. I think communities are built in the front yards. That was the first thing I did. Also drove for performance guarantees for builders, especially when it comes to major developments. We don't want to end up like the township or downtown by the arena. And then also education-wise, I have 3 degrees, international business from Indiana and 2 engineering degrees. Also passionate about future infrastructure, electric vehicle design, and designing electric vehicles and how they interface with cities. And we can cover more as we get into it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we'll begin the questions. Mr. Giesa, you will answer first. The first question is, describe your qualifications and experience for this office and explain your reasons for running. Please unmute.
Thank you. My qualifications are when I was working in the computer industry, I was running the tail end of that, my career, I was running $1 million programs. So with multiple people, and they were, the last program that I did was for the county, and I delivered it on time and under budget. So that kind of gives me an idea of how to work with numbers and money and things like that. And obviously, I've been able to I was successful with the Northville Rotary, working on their foundation and working as a president. I also organized I don't know if you've heard about it, but there's a bicycle ride here in town. It's called the Tour de Ville, and I started that 8 years ago, and it's a tremendous undertaking. It takes about a year to put it all together. So I wrote the lesson plans for all of that, and I think we're going to do we're probably going to gross another $20,000 this year. We've averaged a gross of about $20,000 a year and that all goes out through the Rotary Foundation. So I think that plus I've got 4 years on council already. So I kind of know how things work. I know who to talk to and who can help get things done. I'm kind of aware of the process now, and I really enjoy what I'm doing with the county, with the city. It's a really fun job. So thank you for the question.
Mr. Carter, same question.
Thank you. So in terms of my qualifications, I did my undergraduate in business at the University of Michigan, went on to get graduate degrees also in business from the University of Notre Dame and Duke University. Following that, I went into management consulting. And so I've spent nearly 20 years really working with leading companies to try to help them deal with some of the most complex business challenges that they face day to day and helping them prepare for an ever evolving future. Recent years, I've focused in the automotive and mobility leader, as the automotive and mobility leader for Slalom Consulting. It's been an incredible experience as we've watched the automotive industry shift to a technology industry. And I think that experience really helps me in a couple of ways. One, it's recognizing that we always need to plan for tomorrow. We need to plan for the future in an ever-changing environment. And two, we need to build great teams. We need to bring people together, and we need to focus on solving problems. As we look at the challenges and the opportunities facing our city, we're really looking at a Downs development where we can do incredible things, but we need to ultimately think about the city, its history, our density. We need to look at our traffic patterns. We need to think about the long-term impacts on our infrastructure and on our green space and our parks. When we think about Ford Field and the Riverwalk, we need to think about how we take all these plans that people have put together and how we build momentum around that. We raise funds and ultimately we make these plans happen. And I'm passionate about taking the skills that I've developed in my professional life and now using this opportunity to really say, how can I give back? How can I contribute to the community and try to make a difference for the future? And the last thing I would note as a father of three, I think there's a unique passion there that you want to do everything you can to help your community and make sure it's a great place for your children to grow up and live.
Mr. Krenz?
All right, excuse me. Thank you as well. I'll answer it a little differently. I'll look at what I think the top priorities for the citizens are, and then how my qualifications plug into those. I think number one, and both John and Patrick rightfully touched on it, was the Downs. I currently serve on the Planning Commission. I worked on the subcommittee for outreach. I have 1,000 hours in from the very beginning when Hunter Pastor came in. I've read 300, 400 pages of verbatims, wrote surveys, led the open houses. I think in the next 4 years is when you're going to see the Downs development pass through Planning Commission and into City Council. I have that background. I think I could be that representative on City Council who's been there for all those 4-hour meetings. Next one is we have to look at strategic deployment of our amenities. And the way I say that is Northfield is a small city with a non-industrial tax base. So we have to be very careful about how we deploy our scarce resources. So I'm proud to serve as chair of the Farmers Market Task Force with 15 of my fellow community hand raisers and volunteers. And we're keenly aware of the resources we have available. So I'm going to challenge as a city council member how we deploy those to best serve the community. Also, I think another key element is attracting families. And this is my primary reason from the beginning why I was interested in this, is I want to implement ordinance and other policies that are going to bring families back to the Northville. Northville is aging rapidly, and we need to get our next generation of 40-year stewards back into the city. Also balancing neighborhoods. Neighborhoods are key with all the infill that's going on. As part of the Planning Commission, I helped write the floor area ratio standards, the front porch incentive, and I'm also an advocate for such things as a Northville skate park. And then also I'll tip my hat to John on what he's been doing at Ford Field. And, obviously if you ever taken your child to the bathroom there, we have an opportunity to get better. And then finally, 21st century infrastructure. It's I can take the information I have in my history in electric vehicle design, and I'll stop. Thank you.
Next question, we'll start with you, Mr. Carter. What are the priority issues facing our community, and how would you address them if elected?
So I think you've heard all three of us start to jump into those priorities. I keep getting asked the question of what is the one priority that we need to face, and my first response is always a very simple one. When you have three kids, you don't know what it's like to only have one priority or one issue that you need to face, and that's where we're at as a community. So if we start with the Downs development, this is the 49 acres that we like to refer to as the most sought after real estate in Southeast Michigan. Obviously, we're a little biased, but it's an incredible opportunity. And we've done this before as a community. We did the Katy development years ago, the Yerkes development, but we need to make sure we do it in the right way that's consistent with our community. And as I mentioned before, and as the other candidates running have started to highlight, we need to think about things like density, traffic flow, walkability, green space, make sure we're ultimately building a community in the next neighborhood that's going to fit within our town. From there, I would say the Ford Field, I want to see a new city entrance. I want to see pavilions. I want to see a new walkway. And ultimately, as was noted earlier, bathrooms and a new playscape. We put a task force together with 60 members of our community. We put together some phenomenal plans. I want to make sure those become a reality. And then as a member of the Sustainability Committee, I'm also passionate about daylighting the Riverwalk, the Rouge River that comes through Northville, connecting it through that new Downs development and bringing it all the way into Hines Park. I think this is a wonderful opportunity for our community to have additional green space and park space, and really a walkway that we will enjoy for generations to come.
Mr. Krenz?
All right, thank you. So priority-wise for the city, there's multiple priorities. I touched on some of them in my last answer, particularly on the Downs, of course. But I want to expound on that and start with roads and infrastructure, particularly infrastructure. So citizens of the city can attest to what happens when our infrastructure wasn't living up to the storms that occurred this summer throughout the city. So what we have to do is look at the entire system. So I'm sort of a system engineer. I look at soup to nuts, the whole thing. And I'll start with our trees. Our trees are, especially where infill is occurring, trees are being cut down. Trees are your first line of defense against erosion and water absorption during storms. Then, of course, we have to get into the amount of hardscape. And we haven't, even though we did floor area ratio, the hardscape of, I believe it's a 30% requirement, was not changed. So you end up still having runoff that would either go into your neighbor's lot or into the street and stormwater drains. Also, those stormwater drains are old. They're in process of being replaced. We need to target those. They're from I think 4-inch now, goes back way to the beginning of the last century. We got to get going quicker on those, especially in the areas that are prone to flooding. And we also got to enforce ordinance, especially with hillside when all that mud came down the hill. Also, attracting business is key, especially if we want to bring more business to Katy Street when the Downs develops. And also, I'm a little concerned, and I think we should be watching, especially as financial stewards of the city, what happens if inflation is not transient, if it does go on, and what that means with respect to our bond rating. And we need to be careful about having a fortress balance sheet, especially when we have scarce resources to us. So those would be other ones on top of the Downs and the other things I mentioned. Thank you.
Mr. Gisa? Okay, priorities. Well, I'm going to be repetitive. John and Andrew do a great job and we both have the same passion. I think we both have a lot of the same reasons for running. My biggest priority is the Downs. It's a huge parcel of property. It could change the city significantly, or it could complement the city significantly. So we have to mind our P's and Q's while the builder is going through the site approval process. And that could be a multi-year process. And I think it's going to be a challenge to make sure that the citizens understand the process and understand what's happening at each stage of the process. So there'll be a big need to make things as transparent as we possibly can as we proceed through the Downs approval process. Infrastructure, yes, we had we had really bad runoff problems from the hillside school. I live up here beside the hillside school, and it was flooding lower parts of Cabbagetown. So we need to figure out what to do with the stormwater before it gets to that kind of a problem. And I'm a big fan of rainwater gardens and sequestering things and impervious pavement, pervious curbing, so that the water goes into the water table instead of causing big problems for downriver infrastructures. Daylight in the river is key to making the downs improvements so that it's real. And then the trees. We need to enforce our tree ordinances, and we need to put some teeth in it. And we have done that already with the ordinances. Thank you.
Mr. Krenz, this next question starts with you. What is your opinion about the latest proposal for the Northfield Downs development?
Well, thank you for asking. Right now, that's my other day job, serving on Planning Commission. We are currently at the very, very beginning. So on August 30, sorry. Okay, I thought maybe you couldn't hear me. On August 30th, we had a concept review. We're not even starting the clock yet on a site plan. That's going to happen over the next many quarters. But if I had to take a look at what is on that concept relative to the master planning, rewriting of the language we've been doing for the last 18 months, there's about 10 things I would look at that jump out to mind. Is the balance of the housing types. Right now, we're only about 11% single family homes. That's not really representative of where the rest of the city is. I don't really support the idea of those single family homes being along Center Street. That's a busy area. I don't think we'll ever make that look like Penniman. I think that needs to be something that's more of a row house or a townhouse or business. Vehicular access is key. We're obviously going to have to spend a lot of time on that. There's going to be traffic studies. I think we know that's coming, not only from the developer, but also from the city. Increase Katy Street setback so we can have a design for full roads there and full right of way, so you can get on street parking. Business and entertainment along Griswold. Griswold currently shows townhouses that are across the street from the office. I don't think that's the appropriate application there. There's an above ground detention basin, which I think is more of a suburban solution on the south side that needs to be replaced. Retail, I want to show complements as opposed to competitors to what's on Main Street. And that has to do with on Main Street, you got more boutique and bistro type restaurants. I think you want to look at different square footage in the retail there so they can complement, not compete. I want to see a BEV electric vehicle charging strategy. That wasn't evident to me in what I've seen so far. A farmer's market. I'm very sensitive to the farmer's market. Currently, there's not one shown, which is why I'm quite passionate about it. And finally, inviting families in. We need a better story on families. Those are my 10 things. Thank you. Mr.
Gisa, same question.
All right. Well, about the Downs proposal. So I was involved in the first go around. That was a couple of years ago. I really didn't like any of the plans or any of the designs of the way that they were put together. And the new design has some nice aspects to it. They've cut down on the amount of streets. They've improved the parking. They've put in pocket parks. They're working with the elevation. There's a 40-foot drop from one side, from the north side to the south side, and the first proposal didn't really work at all with the elevation. A couple of months ago, one of our consultants, planning consultants, gave us a PowerPoint presentation, or gave Planning Commission a PowerPoint presentation about a community out west. It's called Issaquah, Washington. And the diversity and the mix of facades. So in the plan we have now, there's a row of townhouses, there's a wad of apartments, there's single family homes that are cheek and jowl. And I would rather mix all of that up and add a lot of landscaping, but it makes the story that I heard, it was a very convincing story, and it would make just the Downs, people would come to see the Downs and people would come to live in the Downs if we had a design like that. So there's also parking. We need to get realistic about the parking. Let's see. That's about it. I'm all done.
Mr. Carter.
So I'll start off by acknowledging, and it was referenced a moment ago, that progress has been made with the Downs. We started at over 600 units. We're now looking at about 478. We're moving in the right direction. But the truth is we're not there yet. I mean, that's just simply my view. And I think that's where the vast majority of citizens of Northville are right now. As I think about it, we referenced the 11% of single family homes. I think that's a good point. We need more, but I'd also say I want to see larger lot sizes. And the reason for that is I want to see as much unique nature to each of those homes as we can have. And by giving a larger lot size, not necessarily a larger home, but a larger lot size, it provides flexibility for those owners to make changes and modifications to their homes over time so that it will grow and develop, and that uniqueness will develop over time, similar to the other neighborhoods that you see in town. I would agree with regard to Center. I think you are looking at a relatively busy street there, and we need to think about whether that's row homes or townhouses, but I'd like to see that first level be commercial. I think that's an excellent opportunity there. I think we need a traffic study. There's no doubt about that. We've got one road that goes east, and I'm very concerned about ingress and egress out of town once we have the Downs development in place. I would also point out, though, that I think there is an opportunity with commercial along Katy and also connecting into the this seems to be forgotten Foundry Flask and Katy Street development that's taking place. And what we've for years talked about is an art and culture district down there. We have 2-hour waits in our restaurants on Fridays and Saturdays. This is an opportunity to expand. But that brings my my next point, which is walkability. We need to make sure we connect our town square and our town to this area so it feels like one downtown and not multiple. And then lastly, I think we need to continue to push for increased green space. And the Riverwalk is a perfect example of how we can use this to actually open up the town and create some natural beauty within our community.
Mr. Gisa, this next question begins with you. What are the advantages of such a large development in the city? And what do you see as a major problem evolving from that development?
Okay, advantages of the Downs and major problems. Okay, the advantages, it's good questions. Advantages are taking care of of what's there right now, so that we don't have a racetrack, we don't have a river running underneath the horse stables. We don't have a floodplain that's out of control, often out of control, and it's so to be able to take care of that and solve those problems with developing it is a good thing for the city. I believe we can make it something. We can increase the desirability or the destination quantity of the city by having the Downs developed correctly. Another advantage is the revenue stream to the city. We're a tiny city, and having that extra income would be a nice thing. So major problems with the Down: traffic, walkability, green space, water runoff, all of the impact on the environment, all of those kinds of things. We need to get those figured out before we really give a green light to the Downs. It's and we're not the only people here. There's a lot of our citizens that are very concerned with that too. So that's me.
Mr. Carter?
Well, first off, I would say if we do it the right way, it can be another wonderful neighborhood in our city. And so I know initially you've all seen where I'm at on this proposal, but I think if we do it the right way, it can be very similar to how we talk about Cabbagetown, Bealtown, our historic district, all of the areas that, I think about over in Oakland County, over by Ammerman, the wonderful communities there. I think if we do it right, it can add to our community and it can be a wonderful infusion of new families. I would also add that, I do think it can be a wonderful entry point. As you come down Center entering, I'd like to see, instead of the side of a townhouse, I'd like to see a park or some kind of an entryway that welcomes us into the city. And I do think it will be more attractive than the racetrack that exists today. I do think there's a revenue benefit to the city, but I also don't want to get caught up in that because I think we have to be very careful because with that will come additional services and we need to plan accordingly. And we need to make sure we're focused on doing what's right for the long term, but there is a benefit associated with that. In terms of the challenges, we talked a little bit about infrastructure. I'm going to focus on some new things. Infrastructure is the first one I would look at. We need to think about the roads themselves, the impact that the traffic's going to have on it. We need to think about drainage. We need to think about our sewer systems and the impact in the surrounding homes around that to make sure we have a plan that can absorb those new homes. I'm also not totally sold yet that we have coverage from a school perspective. So I think we need to think about not just the immediate, but if I look at the impact through middle school, through high school, and I look at it from a long-term standpoint, are we contained there? Do we need to look at what that's going to do? And do we need to look at expansion plans accordingly?
Mr. Krenz?
All right, thank you. So some advantages to the Downs, and I think there can be many. I think this can be a positive. First off is walkable density, and I'm saying walkable density to storefronts, we'll say, that are clustered closer together on Katy Street in Maine. Study after study in urban planning shows that the more you have people who live within a walkable radius of the city, the more viable the town can be. So we have an opportunity to bolster our existing downtown along Main and Center, but then also develop that along Katy with a clean sheet, which I think is pretty exciting. We get to start fresh with some modern sustainable concepts. You're looking at some remediation that needs to occur, but imagine we're much better informed, thanks to the sustainability team, on how you open up the river. Green space, I'm very encouraged. Obviously, we haven't even started the clock yet on that, so I'm not too worried about details at this point, but they're showing about 1/3 of it as being green space, which is good. And that includes opening 1,100 feet of the river. I want to make sure that we have the opportunity to complement the downtown business like I talked about. So a lot of your downtown businesses are in older structures. So you have bistros and boutiques. I think we could go with some businesses and amenities that maybe offer a different square footage and a different opportunity and cut down on those 2-hour dinner waits. We also have a potential, and this gets into housing stock and housing types, on getting families in, getting more diversity of family into the city with foot in the door housing. And I think that that's something that I'm proud to say on Planning Commission I'm pushing for really hard, along with an all new farmers market. Right now, we don't have one in the future state. Some of the problems are going to be, making sure that we do that it isn't parasitic to tax. We will have, there will be an increase in tax revenue, but a very high increase as well in terms of burden. And we got to make sure that that shows it. Obviously traffic, I think everybody's keenly aware of that. And then also water runoff. But I think that we're keen to that as well, along with our other utilities. So we do have those problems, but I think that we can work through those through the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Mr. Carter, this next question is for you. If the current proposal is accepted, it would increase the volume of traffic on local streets. What would you recommend the city do to address this?
Well, I think you're starting with a false positive, if I do say so myself. I don't think we necessarily need to accept the current proposal. I think this is our opportunity as a community to challenge that proposal. And I think the question that's being raised is a very good one because it needs to be where we start with that conversation. I do think we need to look at the long-term plans for our business district and our social district, which is currently shut down. If that does open up, or if we open up a portion of center, that's going to impact traffic flow, and we need to have a conversation. So as a city council, we need to be thinking about what is the long-term plan for the social district, and then taking that into account. In terms of the Downs, I think we do need to conduct a full, complete traffic study. I think we need to look at density to make sure that it is containable, and we need to work together to challenge those plans where necessary. And we may need to look at expanding roads surrounding us as we look at the exits going down 7 Mile, we look at the exits going out Sheldon, if necessary, to make sure that it will be a viable option in the future. The reality is we haven't really changed ingress and egress in Northville in over 60 years. And so I think this is a perfect opportunity to step back and take a look at that. But I'm not willing to necessarily accept that we need to change our traffic flow to meet the Downs. I think we need to change the Downs to meet the traffic flow. And that's the conversations that we're going to be having in the next couple of years.
Mr. Krenz?
Very much. So with respect to traffic, I'm glad to say the Planning Commission has spent countless hours on this. There's been multiple surveys. I've spent quite a lot of time on this one. So what we have found is first, kind of the first domino of the fall is, will the twist exist in the future state? That is the Center Street and Main Street. And the reason that's critical is we went back to a traffic survey in 2019 that showed that 88% of all rush hour traffic down Center Street was northbound from M14 into Novi. So if we were to put a plug in that traffic on Center Street, that leads to a much different calculus and much different equation than we had back then. And it might be an opportunity. We'll see that come back in front of the council in next term. And I'd certainly like to be a part of that and make my contributions. Second is, there is a plan that the city of Wixom is hosting or leading on expanding Beck to 5 lanes. Beck is the other major street that travels north-south. So that might be a big opportunity to pull some of the traffic off of downtown and into the major road there. Third, work from home. We definitely are going to have to see what work from home has done. In my company, they're projecting that over 40% of people will never go back into an office full time. So again, the math and the calculus and all the surveys we've done so far on traffic probably need to be redone. And then also with respect to density, believe it or not, there's a loose correlation. It's not no correlation between well-designed communities and housing types and when people actually walk and traverse through towns. So it's not necessarily, if we design it correctly, you might have a lot of work from home, people with businesses that are on the lower level that may or may not ever leave. So, if we design the communities right, and this is what urban planners all around the world show, that there is an opportunity to have the right design without there being a significant impact on traffic. And then the last item is, we have an opportunity to go back and redo a lot of things without infrastructure development, which includes, among other things, timing of traffic lights, which hasn't been done in 20 years. Thank you.
Mr. Gisa?
Well, the advantage of batting cleanup is that the people before you really, they touch on all the hot topics. But I think John and Andrew and I are in violent agreement on a lot of these things. What would I do to accommodate traffic? Well, like John says, we're not quite sure that, or I'm not quite sure that we're going to see the same kind of traffic loads that we did post-COVID. There were big things about turnabout or turnaround or roundabouts, all different kinds of concerns about it, and with the assumption, with Andrew's point, that Center Street is going to have that same kind of traffic. Well, it's a pipe for Novi residents, so we need to. You can do something of that. You can take some of that off with Beck, and if you do Beck, if you improve Beck Road with walkability in mind, and a new traffic study with all these different kinds of sustainability tenets, we can look at those kinds of things. So we do a new traffic study. We throw in a full-blown walkability study. We also include the work at home, the new kind of business model for home. We try and get that in the study. Let's see. That's about it. Those are my points. Is that we've got it's a pleasant opportunity to get it right and to complement the Downs development.
Mr. Krenz, this question is for you. If the proposed development is voted down, what else could the land be used for?
Well, that's a good question. And the reason why I say that is, having read all the verbatims from the surveys that we authored and sent out into the community, there's a broad set of belief on what that answer could be. But first, we got to deal with the realities of where we are today. And I'll get into the rejected or not rejected in a moment. It is under contract with Hunter Pasteur and a team of other developers and investors, silent investors. So they do have the exclusive right to develop, and they do have that contract for several more years. So that's a known, that's a given. It's not a matter of, at this point, that the city could buy it. So we'll go through and we'll work through on planning commission over the next probably year or so what the site plan would look like. At some point, it's very possible that the developer could withdraw if the planning commission and the citizens of the community draw lines that say, that maybe don't give them a return on investment that they consider to be minimum for the risk that they would be taking on. So that's a possibility that they could walk away. So if that did occur, and as John and I think maybe Pat had said, this is 48.2 acres is the most sought after piece of land in Southeast Michigan. The good news is we will have the rewriting of the master plan done by next February. So the governance will be in place. And we went line by line on that over the last 16 months since we were last in it. So I'm very confident that the new master plan will more accurately reflect all the surveys. Now, with respect to maybe some discussion on whether the city could buy it, the tax burden on that would be so immense. The mill requirement for not only buying the land, remediating it, developing the park, opening the river, the way that it needs to be done, and then maintaining it are so far beyond what 1,200 homes in the city of Northville could do, that probably isn't the way to go. So in short, we do have a master plan that would govern any future activity as it comes.
Mr. Gisa?
Okay, what would I do with the Downs property, or what could be done with the Downs property? Like Andrew said, we're already into a 7-year commitment there, or a seven-year opportunity. So the developer could back out. We could get another developer in. If it still doesn't go, I agree with Andrew, mightily agree with Andrew, that we just can't turn it into a park. We couldn't afford to do it, and we couldn't afford the maintenance if we did it. So that's not a good idea. Some of the other things that could perhaps also be done is continue to shrink the amount of development that goes in there, but there'll be a turning point. There's a point of diminishing returns. So a developer's not going to make any money because he doesn't have enough housing units in his program. So, and on those families, I think the families want to get out from underneath the property and move on. So I think we're looking at either Hunter Pass Stewart doing a deal with us or somebody else close after them. I'm done.
Mr. Carter?
Thank you. Listen, I enjoy the Downs as much as anyone. It's a wonderful area, and it has been an icon within our Northville community. The reality is that time is coming to an end. The current owners don't want to continue to maintain it. There is, as everyone has noted, there's an option out there to purchase it. We've been working with the developer. It's not going to remain the same. So I think ultimately it comes down to what was laid out here. So the next question that I hear quite frequently is could the city just purchase it? Now, the thing I would point out, obviously the expense becomes extraordinary with that. We still have 6.7 million in unfunded liabilities that we've been making great progress to pay down. We can't sacrifice the fiscal health of our city by making this move unless we've got a true plan in place that ultimately results in it being developed. And if it was going to be turned into a park, that would put at risk those long-term plans and isn't viable in its current state. The next element is partnership. Now, I do think we can work with the current developers to find a neighborhood, park, and ultimately Riverwalk combination that creates an extension and an addition to our downtown and brings new families into Northville. Whether or not that ends up being with the current developers, which I think we can work with and I think we can get there, or with the next round of developers, I think it's important that we're going to sit here and we're going to say, here are the things as a community that we value, that we want to be included. You're right, they need to ultimately make a profit. But that doesn't mean we can't find a common ground where they can make a profit and where we can end up having something that's a wonderful addition to our Northville community. And I think we'll work together. And I think ultimately that's where we'll end up getting. It just may take us a little bit of time to get there.
Mr. Gisa, this next question begins with you. If elected to Northville City Council, would you anticipate any conflicts of interest in your personal or professional life which would exclude you from voting on important issues coming before the council?
I'm retired, so I don't have an employer. I'm my own employer, so I really don't. I don't see that as a big issue. There might be something. Well, no, with the sustainability team, that's my pride and passion right now, but I can't see where there would be a conflict of interest there. So if there's a conflict of interest with my investment broker and and the Social Security network, then I'll have one. Otherwise, I don't think I'll have any kind of issues.
Mr. Carter?
No, I do not have any conflict of interest that would prevent me from weighing in on any of the issues we've been discussing that are relevant to the community of Northville. I will, as was just stated, say I'm very passionate about things like the Riverwalk, like sustainability, like Ford Field, like our business district, and ultimately the future of the Downs. But I don't view those as conflict of interest. I view those as opinions, and I got plenty of those. But no, there would not be any situation that I could foresee based on anything that we're discussing today that would prevent me from being fully engaged in the conversation going forward.
Mr. Krenz?
Thank you. So this answer will be short. So it's well spelled out in the City Council book and the Planning Council book and the Code of Ethics, what conflicts of interest might be. There's one that I do have, and that is I currently also serve on Planning Commission. I would be required to step down from Planning Commission, and I've committed to doing so because I cannot make two votes on the same issue. That would be a violation of due process and would put the city in jeopardy. So I would be stepping down from planning the day after election should the citizens elect to put me in there. Anything else on the personal side, already cleared. There's no challenges there. In fact, an interesting item is, so the company I work for, General Motors, is strong. They're fully committed into electric vehicle design and electric vehicle infrastructure, has signaled their commitment to support, even down in the city of Northville, sharing the learnings on how you deploy at high scale EV charging stations. So I could immediately take that information and plug it in without any conflict of interest. And as a side note, my CEO also lives in Northville Township. So there's a very good chance that she would plug into one of those at one time. So I am free and clear, other than I would have to step down from planning.
Mr. Carter, this question is for you. Our country is in the middle of a global pandemic. What's your position on encouraging people to get vaccinated and wear masks?
I mean, there's no doubt that COVID has impacted all of our lives a great deal. And I think that, frankly, we have an opportunity to beat this thing. Vaccines have proven to be incredibly successful in fighting back the virus. I think that, I personally have children 11, 9, and 6 years old that aren't vaccinated. And so when I go out, I do wear a mask, even though I am vaccinated, if I'm in a large group setting, to make sure that I'm taking care of them. So, ultimately, I think this is an issue that, as a community, we can rally together. I think if you look at national statistics, Northville has a very high vaccination rate, and we've done very well at keeping our numbers as contained as possible and supporting each other.
Mr. Krenz?
Well, thank you. So my wife and I both were vaccinated as soon as we possibly could. My 12-year-old daughter, we talked to the pediatrician about that. We're comfortable with all the work that our pediatrician put into it and told us about that. We got her vaccinated, and I'm so happy to report that the kids are back at school full time. Mental health has been a huge challenge. I do have family members that I'm very close to that are in high school that have had significant mental struggles. So anything to get vaccination up, especially like in high schools and back in, is only going to be good for them, because it's easy to count the numbers on the number of cases, but we also have a little bit of a mental health crisis. So that involves some balance, and I've seen it in my family. So when the opportunity comes for our children to get vaccinated, again, we'll consult with our pediatrician, who we consider to be an expert. If she supports it, we'll be glad to do it. Also, one thing that's been a win, and go back to how the twist got started in downtown Northville, is it was a lifeline to our businesses to be able to eat outside. And I was able to give the spacing because you're able to get the exterior ventilation and get the particulate densities on the virus so low that it becomes very low risk. And the good news, and it was already touched on, is the city of Northville, even with that outdoor dining district, which has been wildly successful, has very low cases. And so I think there's an opportunity there for sure, at a minimum, as long as the pandemic's going on, to keep our businesses viable and let people go out and, bring back some of what was normal and some mental health and be able to sit outside. safely and distance, of course. And I think most people do behave accordingly when you walk downtown and see that. So I would certainly want to keep that going. And I think that's in the four corners of the purview of what the council can control anyway. So I would definitely support keeping the twist going and any efforts that the city has to vaccinate people who haven't been already. Thank you.
Mr. Gisa.
Okay. I agree with Andrew. Masks and vaccinations can't really be controlled by city council. However, I choose to follow the science. I'm vaccinated, and I do that because I have older in-laws and I love to go visit them. And I know that even though I'm vaccinated, I can carry that. I could spread that to them, and I wouldn't want to have that kind of responsibility. So I mask up. Also, there might be other people in my vicinity and that I may infect. So I mask up when I go into stores. I mask up when even going to the gymnasium. I mask up when I go to the gym. There are variants on the horizon, and with the fact that it's really hard to get some people vaccinated. And there's a hesitation to get vaccinated, and that plays to the variants coming in and becoming more potent and quicker infections. So I choose to follow the state guidance, and I choose to follow the science, and I mask up wherever I go.
Mr. Krenz, this next question starts with you. The Northville Social District at Main and North Center Road is scheduled to remain closed until April 2022. Do you think the residents should be asked for input on how long the closures should remain?
Yeah, I'll answer that a few different ways. Thank you. This one's a passion of mine. The good news is that they're already asking. There's been at least one combined meeting of City Council and the DDA that sought citizen feedback along with surveys. And if I get elected back on the council, if the citizens see so, we'll do that again. And I think we need to, before we progress beyond where it closes now, is do an inventory, not just of the citizens, but of the businesses, and say, is this a net benefit? Because what's interesting is in that first year in 2020, we were one of the only ones in town that could had an outdoor social district in the restaurants. But now that as more and more cities have opened up, is it still viable? And based on walking downtown as much as possible, especially on the weekends, it certainly looks like it. But I would like to see where the information goes on that one. And what do the citizens that are immediately adjacent, let's say on Wing and Dubar and those areas, are they seeing upticks in traffic of people trying to skirt around? And I'd want to solicit their opinions and get a comprehensive view of what's happening. But also do an inventory with the businesses and a survey of the businesses. How many of them are struggling because you can't park in front anymore? How many of them have older people who can't be dropped off in front, but maybe have to be dropped off in the Marquise parking lot? And I want to be informed that way. And then if we show that the overwhelming majority of information does or does not suggest that we continue with the district, which I think is a major enabler for young families and for walkability. And as I alluded to before, traffic, I would see no reason why we couldn't keep going with it. So I would fully advocate any kind of study, especially as we get closer to the end, maybe over this winter in Q1, and see what the data looks like and make sure that council makes an informed decision based on all the stakeholders that are involved. Thank you very much.
Mr. Gisa?
Yeah, the social district, would I open it? Well, once again, Andrew took all the wind out of my sails. He's, council, we can't do anything unless there's, well, I take that back. As a council person, you can spend a lot of time talking to your neighbors, talking to your friends, walking other neighborhoods, banging around, just listening to people. But at the same time, I think we have to listen to the DDA. We have to listen to, maybe we could put up some surveys. We have to gather the information and analyze it. We have to digest it. And then we can come up with some firm plans and maybe promulgate those and have citizens comment on them also before there's any big decision. I've seen some ideas about opening up Center, about extending down Dunlap, about maybe going down a bit further west on Main. There's a number of different kinds of ideas that are floating around right now, and uh, uh, so I think we need to evaluate all of those ideas and then talk to the city about it and talk to the business people about it and get their input.
Mr. Carter.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, as a member of the Economic Development Committee for Northville, which is a subgroup of the DDA that focuses almost entirely on helping our local restaurants and shops. This is also a topic that I'm very passionate about. If you look nationwide during COVID, 46% of restaurants closed. It had a devastating impact across this country. And we look in Northville, we had a town hall in the spring. 3 separate restaurants called in and said they had had the most successful month that they had ever had during that period. This was incredibly successful in helping us navigate and manage what was an incredibly difficult time across our country. And despite the fact that, as you heard the 3 of us all passionately speak out in favor of vaccinations, the reality is COVID's not going away. And so in the near term, as we think about what's going to happen this winter, obviously we've extended it through April. As we look through that timeline, I think we need to be very cautious to not try to make any changes that ultimately could hurt those businesses, recognizing that we're still dealing with a lot of the challenges that led to this great success in the first place. Beyond that, I think it has created an amazing spot for our community to gather and come together, and it's added to our vibrant downtown. So I think we absolutely need to engage with our population. I saw a poll that had us at 80 to 90% support early on. I think we'll need to do a follow-up poll, and I know there's already discussions of that happening, I believe, in November, to re-gauge where they're at. I completely agree we need to talk to our businesses, and I think we need to do this soon because this needs to be part of our walkability studies and the traffic studies we were talking about. I also think as we talk about our social district, we need to think about not only are we going to have a long-term plan for it, but if we are, can we put nice entryways to it? Can we look at lighting across it? Can we partner with our restaurants and with our shops to make it even more successful so we're not planning in the near term, but for the long term?
Mr. Giza, this next question begins with you. Do you believe that the Northville elections in 2020 were conducted with integrity and that the results accurately reflect the responses of the voters?
Yes, I do. In the first 2 years that I was on council, I was part of the election committee. So in other words, we go through piece by piece, step by step, everything that the city does to send out mail about ballots, to bring ballots in, and to handle the ballot process and take absentee ballots, and also take in the regular. We have 2 precincts, so they manage all of the physical voters that come into both those precincts. I can guarantee you, by being involved in the setup and the proofing of those processes, that they are certified valid. There's no. It's really hard, and I've been in computers for about 50 years. It's really hard to get into those things, and so I have supreme confidence in this year's balloting process.
Mr. Carter?
Yes, simply put, I am very proud of the processes we have in place. As was just mentioned, it is a highly controlled process. It is well managed. I think the outcomes reflected the input and the votes of the citizens of Northville. I will also say that in terms of what we were provided when we were looking to run, in terms of the conversations I've had with my fellow candidates, all of us, both in the past in terms of elections and in this election where we're participating, have been very diligent to make sure that we are following every rule, we are managing the process appropriately, and we are committed together to make sure that's the case. So not only do I have full faith that the elections in 2020 were held to a high standard and resulted the view of the voters, I am also 100% confident in the upcoming election and the output that's gonna result.
Mr. Krenz.
I'll save us 2 minutes here. Yes.
Okay. Next question starts with Mr. Carter. Do you think that the city of Northville should do more to address global warming and to reduce our carbon footprint? If so, what do you propose should be done?
So I mentioned earlier that I am a member of the Sustainability Committee. And I think that as we, and you're going to hear from one of my other candidates on this topic as well, but I think that as we look at Northville, we have a wonderful opportunity. We've been talking about Ford Field. We've been talking about the Riverwalk. I think this is an opportunity to expand our green space within our community, to open up, daylight that river, and really turn this into a natural, basically share in the natural beauty of our surrounding area. I also think our tree canopy is incredibly important. Northville has an aging trees all across our city. We need to make sure that we are working as diligently as we can because it's a contribution to it. Additionally, as an owner of an electric vehicle myself, I can tell you that I am very much a supporter of looking for opportunities around, alternative fuels, things that are going to be more environmentally friendly. I think we can all do our part. We're blessed in Northville to be surrounded by Hines Park, Mayberry, for all of those of us that love to ride bikes, that love to spend time in the park, go for runs. We're all committed together to make this a beautiful place to live and have a positive impact on our environment.
Mr. Krenz.
All right, thank you. Yeah, John, I'm going to violently agree with you on some of this stuff here, or actually all of it. But yeah, my first note was tree canopy, and that goes back also to stormwater runoff. Look no further than what happened when they were going to put in the office at Beale and Northville Road. There's a 120-year-old catalpa tree there. That's a landmark tree. Planning Commission had allowed that to occur and did a tree inventory, and that tree was eliminated anyway. So there is no trees there. So you got to play a little bit of defense here, and defense means you got to develop the tree canopy, as John alluded to. So I'm 100% aligned with you. And we got to put more teeth into construction standards. We did a little bit. We got tree protections. I'm proposing that we also include landmark trees and remediation to protect landmark trees and their root structures and master planning final site plans. Also, I know this is coming because I'm in the automotive field, but eventually downstream, we'll be able to look at natural gas and fuel cell trucks for our DPW and fire. Police is going to be a little further along before we can get into EVs because of the cycle that's involved as a national cycle in terms of performance, high-speed pursuit, and everything like that. So it's probably going to be a little while before we can walk away from the Tahoes on those because it's very particular, very specific. And the automotive companies can only build to one spec. And the EV design is I'm deeply involved with right now is not just there yet. And then, as I alluded to before, one of the reasons why I'd like to throw my hat in the ring and be considered by our neighbors is I'm keenly involved or directly involved with electric vehicle infrastructure design and electric vehicle design on our next generation of electric and autonomous vehicles with General Motors. And I think there's a lot that I can bring in terms of how you deploy EV charging stations, at scale and low cost, because it can't be expensive. It's got to be something that we can do. And I can bring that forward. Thank you.
Mr. Gisa.
John, you're right. We're going to be talking the same, singing the same sheet music. Address global warming. That's why I started the sustainability team, is to take care of the ecology, the economy, and the social fibers of our community. We'll start at the community level, and maybe we can grow it a little bit more. So we've already got 3 years into it. We got the city signed up for the Michigan Municipal League. They have a thing called the Michigan Green Challenge. 2 years ago, almost 2.5 years ago, we got the bronze certification. This year we achieved the silver certification. So that means that you have to start establishing baselines for your fuel consumption, your power consumption, what you're doing to maintain the tree canopy, what you're doing as far as pervious pavement, what you're doing for the way your community or your campus, your city campus is consuming energy. So I wanted a solar powered city hall and geothermal heated city hall. I'm also talking to other communities and to other counties about what their sustainability things are, what they consider as sustainability, and how they can help us do sustainability better, and how maybe we can help them do sustainability effort better. So it starts with a seed, and I think we've already got that seed, so that's growing into the community and into the neighboring communities into the county.
Mr. Krenz, this next question begins with you. What kinds of policies, if any, will you pursue to promote social and racial justice in our community?
Ooh, good one. So this gets back to the purview of what city council is capable of doing. So obviously this is a much broader issue in many fronts than what we're doing. But I think if you look at the demographics of city of Northville right now, last I saw, the city itself is, I think, 95 or 96% white at this point. So we definitely have an opportunity to diversify the base of the city. And one of the things, so I'll answer in terms of what I can do right now, not necessarily on what could be done, but I think something that's right in front of us is when you look at the development of the Downs, we're currently pricing out a lot of families that would be keenly interested in moving into the city of Northville for obvious reasons, part of which is the schools. And the schools are an absolute gem here. And so I'm quite certain, I mean, I know of families that want to be here that can't afford to be here. So when you have a gentrification of our city that's occurring right now, and you have 1,600 square foot houses with 3 bedrooms that are being sold for $550,000, I think it's almost a moral imperative that we take a look at in the Downs how we have a portfolio of housing stock. And there's going to be challenges that go with that, because a portfolio of housing stock might require a little bit of density. And we need to have a frank discussion on that, because lower cost housing might be lower margin, or it might even be a loss leader for the developer. So we'll have to unpack all that, but I want to challenge them to do so. And so the way you would do that is maybe not 180 apartments, but maybe you do have some 1 and 2 bedroom apartments for single families that have an opportunity to get their foot in the city, that can afford to be there without bankrupting themselves. And then also 2 and 3 bedroom row houses and townhouses. And I think that in terms of what we can do in the very near term to spread the diversity of the city is staring right in front of us, is something we can act on immediately. So that's what I'm most interested in right now.
Mr. Gisa.
That's a good question. One of the key tenets in sustainability is that last one I talked about is social fiber. Inside of that social fiber precepts, it's called DEI, diversity, equality, and inclusiveness. And so one of the things the sustainability team is working on, or will be working on, is how to improve that inside of Northville. So when Andrew was talking about affordable housing, we're talking about starter homes for, if my daughter wants to move in here with her 3 little kids, she needs a place where she loved Northville. So she needs a place where she can live in Northville and raise her kids the same way that she may have been raised in Northville. She needs that start. Like Andrew said, you can't sell $500,000, $600,000 houses to that income bracket. The other thing is the service community, the people that wait your tables, the people that fix your bicycle, all of those, that whole service layer, they need a place to stay too. There's no mass tram, and it costs to own a car. So, and there's not a lot of rental property in Northville right now. Very little. I think there's 3 buildings, not counting Allen Terrace. So we need that. We need the diversity, the equality, and the inclusiveness, and affordable housing in Northville. And that'll come with the Downs, I hope.
Mr. Carter.
Yeah, I mean, I would start off by noting, and not to give a sales pitch for our community, but Northville is an incredibly welcoming community. I think we're fortunate. We've got an engagement and excitement around kind of what lies in the future as we talk about expanding, as we talk about growing as a community itself. The other thing I would note is we are incredibly fortunate in our civil servants, our police, our fire department. To put it very simply, they're the best. They are fantastic individuals, and they are absolutely wonderful at what they do and the way they serve our community. But we've also continued to invest in training programs to make sure that we are giving them every ounce of support that we can along the way. In terms of the conversation we were just having, I think it's absolutely correct that we need to be thinking about our population and our demographics. You've heard several of us go down this road, but we need to create we need to be a community that's welcoming to young families. Young families are a core to any community. They bring commerce, they bring activity, they bring energy, and we need to be making sure we're supporting that and we're providing those opportunities because we are, frankly, an aging community, as was noted earlier. The other side, though, is just because our average age is going up doesn't mean that we're in great shape with our elderly. Truth be told, we're not. It is a difficult situation right now. We need to continue to invest in our community centers, transportation availability for our seniors, our Allen Terrace facility, which this year I know we invested in, and I think is a wonderful way in which we're supporting that diversity within our community. And we need to recognize that it's very difficult in Northville right now, because if I'm an older individual and I want to downsize, the tax implications of that decision could actually be the main factor in which way I go. And so we need to be thinking about that as a city council so that we support those that have lived here for 40 years while also creating a foundation for the next group of families that will live here for 40 years.
So, Mr. Gisa, this next question is for you. What, if anything, would you like to keep the same in Northville?
The history. That's one of the biggest draws, is the deep history that we have. I'm 2 blocks away from the building where Henry Ford went on his honeymoon. So there's where I came from, there's nothing like that. You don't have that kind of history. There was a fire hydrant that they pulled out when they remodeled the streets, and I think the date on that was 1818 or something. And you just don't have that out west. So I marvel at the amount of history that it's right around here. I'm brushing my elbow against it all the time. That little town kind of thing where you're walking down the street and somebody says hi. It's that little town charm. People come here just to get that. So those are the 2 things that I would keep.
Mr. Carter.
Yeah, I mean, I think you heard a little bit of it a moment ago, but I completely agree. I think the first thing I would add is our community and the passion that our residents have. We talked earlier about how we formed a Ford Field Task Force and 60 people volunteered and brought their time and talents into that. If you walk through town, people are constantly coming up to me and saying, here are my thoughts about the Downs. Here are my thoughts about the Riverwalk. Here are my thoughts about the social district. And that's what creates that vibrant set of ideas that we're exchanging today. And it also is why I have full faith and confidence that any of these plans we can make a reality, because we have that passion behind it. And that community element also is why we chose to live here. So, I made a comment before that as they were talking about the development, there was a reference in some of the planning commission materials that were presented that talked about how it was going to be vibrant like a New York, a Chicago, or a London. And the truth is we love Northville. We like our small town. We like our community, and we love our history. Kind of highlighting what was said a moment ago. I live in the historic district, and I'm proud of what the HDC, our historic district commission, does to make sure that we maintain that connection to our past so that we can celebrate these elements. And, having a home that was built in the 1800s comes with plenty of problems and plenty of issues, but it also comes with character, and it comes with stories, and it comes with things that are just wonderful to share with your children, and to have that connection into the community. And I think it's just a wonderful thing, and it's a great place to raise a family.
Mr. Krenz.
This is a fun one to answer. So we'll take a shot at it. First, I'll echo what was said regarding the task force. We have a highly engaged, highly passionate set of stewards in this city. So I currently chair the Farmers Market Task Force, and the skill involved on there is incredible. We have urban planners, architects, farmers, chambers of commerce. You don't have to go far. It's been a huge win because all those committees, all those citizens act as arms and legs for the Planning Commission. And we're going to be so much better off in the Downs comes than we ever were. And we need to keep tapping into that. People who want to give their legacy and give their time to the city. Also shared service agreements. We're a city of 6,000 people, and we share services with Plymouth and with Northville Township. We have to keep those going, and we have to keep those healthy. I mean, we talked about transportation for the elderly. You don't get that if we don't have shared service agreements. We have a shared social worker that we just hired. So when we have mental health matters with police, that person can be hired in and is shared all over the place. But then you also have, when my daughter gets bitten by a dog when she turns 5 years old, I have the fire chief and the police chief on my street within 90 seconds, and they have toys for the kids. You're not going to see that anywhere else. Also planning, I'm proud to say, reopen the master plan. We heard everybody loud and clear, and I think the new plan is going to be is much better, and we're just about done. So if you have an opportunity to plug into that, I encourage you to do so. I think the twist is very, very much a big win, and we got to keep watching that as well. Halloween. So Halloween is big in our area. We're in the historic district as well. I think we should do more on Halloween. It's one of the big holidays we have, and I might even propose we move Halloween to the last Saturday in October so that we can be more inclusive to families who might have to come in. And then also balanced development and infill. I think we're starting to get that under control with some floor area ratio, but I don't think that answers all the questions, and there's more to do there. I'd love to go on, but I think I'm out of time.
This will be our final question. And for you, Mr. Carter, how will you learn what is on the minds of residents?
So I love that question because I think that transparency and that connection is absolutely critical. One of the things that we have done is throughout our campaign is we're actively using social media, a little bit of a shift from past elections, but to continue that conversation, reach out to people that may not have been involved in the process before. I have also been doing a weekly Coffee with Carter event where I sit down at our local coffee shop, Tuscan Cafe, and just exchange ideas with our citizens, hear their feedback. I'm confident that after tonight, several will come in with thoughts and ideas based on what we've been discussing this evening. I think that we can only succeed by doing so and doing it together. And so as we talk about all of these ideas, part of the role of city council will be to bring people together and build a vision for the future. And, you know, I really think that I'm going to do everything I can to continue that loop. It's not just about the campaign. I want to continue these conversations, having coffee with people on a weekly basis, all the way through my time serving the community, because I think the more input, the more feedback we get, the better off the output will be for the citizens of Northville.
Mr. Krenz.
Okay, so in terms of determining what's on the mind of residents, I think we can go many different ways on that. First, it was first and foremost key when we did the master plan update that we had every opportunity for citizen engagement we could. We wrote those 2 surveys. We got over 300 pages of verbatims that allowed us to do follow-up. We did an open house, even a COVID-safe online open house. So we were innovating to that. And that's why I'm pretty comfortable on how the Planning Commission's going. Farmers Market Task Force, another big one for me is we're in farmers market season. So I'll go down there and ask questions and ask the vendors and ask the people who are walking in, and you know, then you find out 90% of people drive there, and maybe it's not as walkable as you would have thought that because they have to get their groceries home. So there's opportunities for learning there. Walkability is a big one. And I think the way that cities design and the way we want to design is going to increase front yard engagement, which is a big part for me. Is I know in my area on Linden and Linden Court area, we all have front porches and we're all talking to each other in the front. And I get a lot of feedback, as well as I'm sure John does too, in terms of the things that I'm working on. But you have to have the right design for the city for people to engage. And that's part of the reason why I think the twist is so interesting. Social media, as John touched on too. We do have, you know, there's a social media presence for the candidates, but I do feel that that kind of divorces from the face-to-face. I mean, I'd rather be face-to-face. I'd rather be meeting people where they are, going to where they are. Social media is like a good kind of touch point, but I wouldn't ever rely on it. With respect to increasing awareness, I think a big one here is we got to figure out more ways to engage our citizenry on big meetings. So in our last planning commission, we had a deep dive discussion on density, which was the big thing that came out of the August 30th. And we only had less than 10 people. And it was disheartening. So we got to find better ways for people to become aware and get to them how they want to be receiving that information, because that's where those key engagements need to be.
Mr. Gisa.
Okay. Well, social media is very important for a lot of people, not everybody, but it's a really good pipe. It might need a filter every now and then, but it's a very good pipe for that kind of information. For me, I get my information by through social media. I also get it with what I call walkabouts, and I walk a lot, and I walk around downtown, and I have a big loop that goes up through the neighborhoods. And if there's somebody out there doing something, I'll stop by and say, "Hi, I'm with the city. What's bugging you? What's important to you right now?" And I get a lot of feedback that way. We need new and better survey materials or strategies or tools. And I'm not sure if, well, we do have skills. We do have people with the skills, but I think we need to get out more mailings and maybe more online surveys. I like the idea about open houses. I have friends in all of the little communities, and I'm trying to get them to sponsor an open house so they could have the neighbors come over. It'd be scheduled months ahead, and then they could have the neighbors come over, and for an hour you just sit and talk, and maybe have some barbecue and a pop. But that's the best way to get your thumb on the pulse of what's going on in the neighborhoods. So that's it.
Now we'll move on to closing statements. Mr. Krenz, would you like to begin?
Yes, thank you very much. All right, so I think you saw tonight you have three very fine candidates, and I encourage everybody in the city, all the citizens who are going to vote, is kind of look deep into our souls and see what you're looking for. But I honestly believe that you're not going to go wrong with either of them. I know them both very well, and they're both very passionate. And anytime you have somebody who's passionate and willing to raise their hand, I'm all for it. So I wish all the citizens the best. I hope they do their due diligence and do their voting with their civic responsibility. I want to focus on the 5 things again, the 5 key things. And the reason why I think I'd like to serve at this time is, first, the downs. I'm on planning commission. I have been for over 3 years, and it's been a lot of work. Often those meetings go 4 hours deep, and you have to get your homework done, and you get 150 pages you have to read ahead of time. And a lot of it's citizen feedback, letters, all that. I've read all of them over the last 3 years. So I'm deeply engaged. I know where everything is, and I'd like to bring that forward to City Council because I do think it's going to work its way through the site plan. Next is the strategic distribution of resources. I think we have to be very careful on how we have our tax dollars, but then also be aggressive going and researching grants. And I know that we have some people that are incredible grant writers. They're going to help go get matching grants and maybe even private and public partnerships and everything like that to help make some of what we're talking about on these committees come true. And I want to put the energy into that. It's not going to come to us. We're going to have to earn it. And we're competing against many other communities. Attracting families. That's why I got started in planning. Is I plan to be here for another 30 or 40 years, God willing, which means I'm going to be living with every decision that gets made. So, I have skin in the game. Balancing neighborhoods. I think there's more to do there on some of our ordinance with respect to setbacks and grading and other things. And then 21st century infrastructure with electric vehicles and stormwater runoff and all that. And we have an aging community. We got to take care of that as quickly as we can, and then create the opportunity for the future. And thank you very much for hosting.
Mr. Carter.
Well, first, I just want to say thank you for all of the thoughtful questions this evening. I think it's been a wonderful discussion. I know a lot of effort goes into planning this, and I truly appreciate it. I'd also like to say thank you to my fellow candidates. All 3 of us are working together every day to make Northville even better, and I'm proud to be here with them today. Frankly, this is how all elections should be conducted. As I noted, this is all about service. This is about our opportunity to give back. I'm proud to have served organizations within our community, such as the First Presbyterian Church, and within our cities, such as the Economic Development Committee, the Ford Field Task Force, and the Sustainability Committee. As we discuss plans for the Downs, our city's fiscal health and infrastructure, Ford Field, the Riverwalk, and the future of our business district, it's obvious we're about to enter one of the most exciting and significant periods in our city's history. Northville's landscape will forever be changed by the decisions made over the next few years, and we need a city council that will maintain Northville's identity while embracing the growth and development that will better the lives of everyone who lives here. One of the things I've learned in my years of consulting is if you want to achieve great things, you need to build great teams. And we need a city council that's going to bring people together, define the best possible vision for the future, and work with our local leadership to make our shared vision for the future of Northville a reality. Thank you.
Mr. Gisa.
Okay. I was born and raised in a little town in northern Idaho. It had a lifestyle much like we have here. I fell in love with Northville when I moved to Michigan. Buying my Northville condo in 1998 was a dream come true. After 4 years on council, I've learned about Northville's ordinances and codes, who's responsible for what, and which processes work best for what problem. I know who can get things done. It's been a privilege to serve on council. I enjoy talking to the people. I believe finding out what the people want must be a continuous process. I will support the sale of Downs property as the plans move through Northville's prescribed approval processes. It's important we take our time to negotiate a successful site plan for this development. It must both complement and enhance Northville's charm and character without drawing away from what we already enjoy. If re-elected, I'll be able to continue working towards that goal. The definition of sustainability is meeting the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. That's my credo. I consider climate change to be one of our most pressing issues. I will continue my work on sustainability, walkability, and environmental conservation, including stormwater assets and our tree population. I'm committed to positive climate change and protecting our environment. I will make climate-sensitive choices wherever possible. And then finally, I'd like to thank all of you for this opportunity. It's very well orchestrated. And for anybody that's listening, you can't go wrong with my friends. They aren't fellow candidates. They are my friends. They're intelligent, they're outstanding, and they're dedicated young men. There would be no problem if both of those guys took the job. I'm going to vote for one of them.
Thank you, candidates. We thank the League of Women Voters members who helped with this forum, Jackie Peters, Carrie Moon Dupree, and Susan Rowe. The forum's been recorded and can soon be viewed on the League's website, lwvnorthwestwayne.org. We also thank the candidates who are running for office. They're asking for your support as they seek a job in the public service sector, and we hope voters will listen to their views. We also appreciate the voters of the city of Northville who are watching this forum to learn about their choices on November 2nd. All of these candidates were also invited to participate in the League of Women Voters Voter Guide, a publication you can access by visiting vote411.org. Election Day is November 2nd. If you're not registered to vote, you could do so up to Election Day. Within 14 days of the election, registration must be done at the office of your city clerk. The polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., but all registered voters can vote early by absentee ballot. Remember that you must first fill out and return an absentee ballot application to your city clerk before a ballot can be mailed to you. If you need an absentee ballot application, contact your city clerk. This concludes our forum this evening. Thank you, candidates, for participating.